Single dad CEO ordered a girlfriend for the party, but his daughter said can't stay forever. David Carter stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the final button on his tuxedo. His cufflinks shimmered under the warm light, but his expression was distant, unreadable. Beneath the polished surface was a man-long practice at hiding how tired he truly felt. His eyes drifted to a From Ned photo on the side table. His late wife smiling, holding baby Ava. He exhaled slow, a habit carved by grief. A knock broke the silence. Mr. Carter called Maria from outside. The Tokyo team just arrived. We're expecting your guest. David checked his watch. She's just someone I hired from an app, he replied. She'll be here. He didn't even know her real name. Zoe. She came highly rated, professional, discreet. It was all he needed for tonight. A partner on paper, a well-placed illusion. Elsewhere, Zoe stood in front of a mirror in a small dressing room, adjusting the sleeves of her navy-yun gown, her golden hair curled around her shoulders, her face calm but guarded. She had done this before, many times, played the part, fit the mold. Tonight felt different. Just another role, she whispered. Get in. Smile. Get out. By the time she entered the Carter Foundation Gala, the ballroom was buzzing. Music floated, champagne sparkled, and chandeliers lit the polished marble floor like liquid gold. David stood among executives, cool and composed. Oh! But the moment he saw Zoe, something in him paused. She moved with grace, elegant but grounded. And though her smile was soft, her eyes held something deeper. David Carter, she asked, her voice calm. Yes, he said, taken aback. Zoe? That's me. She slipped her arm into his. Effortless, as if they had always been meant to fit this way. Before David could speak again, a small voice cried, Daddy! Ava came running in pink tulle, curls bouncing. But instead of running to David, she stopped in front of Zoe. Zoe knelt with instinct. Hi there. Ava looked at her with wide eyes. Then, took her hand? Can she stay forever? She asked. Laughter erupted around them. The previously stiff executives melted into smiles. David blinked. She usually doesn't warm up to people this fast. Zoe held Ava gently. Mabesh recognizes something familiar. With Ava nestled on her hip, Zoe entered the group. It must be Mr. Nakamura, she said with a smile. David's told me so much about your vision for sustainable AI. Nakamura raised a brow, impressed. And you are Zoe? Just Zoe, she said. I work in community development, but I've always admired the intersection of technology and impact. From that moment, the mood shifted. They weren't just speaking to a CEO anymore, or engaging with a family. Zoe moved gracefully through conversation. Thoughtful, genuine, never averaging. She guided Ava gently when the child interrupted, and turned every compliment into a moment of warmth. When one partner mentioned the beauty of the venue, Zoe smiled and added, David wanted it to reflect the best of both cultures. He worked hard on every detail. David watched in silence. She wasn't pretending. She was connecting. Tokyo executive leaned in and whispered, She's wonderful. Warm. You're a lucky man. David opened his mouth to correct them, but stopped. He looked at Zoe holding Ava, laughing softly, eyes glowing with sincerity. Then he closed his mouth and smiled. The night after the gala, David stood at the front door of his modern townhouse, waiting as Zoe stepped out of the black car. The porch. Light cast a warm glow across her face, softening the cool evening air. She looked hesitant but composed. If figured, David said, holding the door open. Since we made quite the impression last night, we might as well finish thorough with dinner. Zoe smiled faintly, stepping inside. Of course, for consistency, he nodded. But the truth was simpler. He did not want the night to end without seeing her. Again, the house was elegant, sleek, and quiet. Too quiet. The walls were tastefully decorated but carried a certain emptiness. Zoe noticed it immediately. The kind of silence that settles into a place when joy has been gone for too long. Eva came, running from the hallway dressed in a fuzzy unicorn pajama set. Her eyes lit up at the sight of Zoe. Mommy Z, she squealed, launching herself toward her.
Ow.
Zoe instinctively tanked and opened her arms. Ava clung to her, like they had been apart for days instead of hours. Mommy Z, Devi repeated, his brows rising. Ava turned, grinning proudly. That's her name now. She's in our pretend family. I'm the baby. Daddy is the daddy, and she's theme of me. David blinked. Is that so? Zoe laughed softly, unsure whether to feel flattered or awkward. Well, I suppose I have been promoted. Ava pulled Zoe toward the living room with determined energy. We're playing now. You sit here, Mommy. Z Daddy, you go to work. You Sagudbi. David exchanged a glance with Zoe, shrugged, and played along. Goodbye, sweetheart, he said, leaning down to kiss Ava's head. Ava pointed at Zoe. Kiss her, too. That's what daddies do. Zoe blushed. David froze. Just pretend. Ava insisted seriously. After a long pause, David bent slightly and placed a gentle, polite kiss on Zoe's cheek. She smiled barely. Something in the air shifted. Oh, not awkward, not forced, just still. As Ava set up teacups and plush animals for a make-believe dinner, Zoe watched. Carefully. The child was radiant, happy, but there was something deeper, something unspoken. How tightly Ava clung to this version of a family, even if it was only pretend. Later, when Ava had been tucked into bed with her favorite stuffed bunny, Zoe wandered into the kitchen while David brewed tea. The clink of the spoon against the porcelain cup filled the silence. Her eyes scanned the room, clean, minimalist like the rest of the house. But one small detail caught her attention. A silver picture from Maristing beside the fruit bowl. She stepped closer. It was a photograph, David holding a tiny baby in a hospital blanket. Beside him, a woman with auburn hair and soft eyes smiled gently. Her features were tired but full of light. Zoe recognized that light. Really, David said behind her, his voice softer than it had been all evening. Zoe turned. She passed away when Ava was 3 months old, he continued, voice steady but distant. It was cancer. Quick, unforgiving. I'm so sorry, Zoe whispered. David nodded once. Thank you. The moment stretched between them, fragile, respectful, and filled with quiet understanding. Zoe placed the photo gently back where it belonged. She looks kind, she said. She was, David replied. She would have liked you. Zoe smiled, touched. Even if I'm just the pretend version. He looked at her for a long second, his gaze softer now. Sometimes, he said, pretend is the only thing that feels real. Zoe swallowed the lump rising in her throat. She was used to roles. Toe pretending, but this house, this child, this man, they were not a script. They were, living, breathing. Memories stitched together with grief and love, and something new beginning to grow. As she sipped the tea he handed her, their fingers brushed briefly again, neither pulled away. The night was still, wrapped in a quiet that felt like a heavy blanket. From the open window, soft ballet music floated through. Ava's favorite lullaby, the one she insisted helped her dream of twirling. Zoe sat alone, in the backyard, curled on a wooden bench, a cup of tea warm in her hands. The air was crisp, tinged with lavender from the garden. She wore one of David's oversized flannel shirts paired with leggings. She looked like she belonged, but inside she felt like egoist in someone else's life. The music reached a familiar crescendo. Her gaze stayed on the grass, but her mind drifted elsewhere. She was 17. Again, backstage, blonde hair pinned tightly beneath a tiara, too pristine. The hush-off, the audience, the smell of rosin, the vibration of the stage under her feet. It was all so vivid. She stepped into the spotlight. One perfect moment, then came the landing. One wrong step, a crack in silence. The doctor said she was lucky to walk again. But the dream, that beautiful, painful dream, was gone. Zoe blinked back to the present. Her hands trembled around the teacup. The music clicked off. The silence felt louder now. She hugged her knees, letting the memory settle. Then came the sound of the screen door creaking open. Devu's foots were soft. You okay? He asked gently. She nodded. Just thinking. You looked like you were somewhere far away. She hesitated, then spoke without meeting his eyes. I used to dance ballet most of my life. He didn't interrupt. I had a spot lined up in Paris, the Opera Garnier. My instructor said I was born for it. She smiled faintly, and I wasn't. Hef frowned slightly. I fell during rehearsal. Cecile fractured spine, rehab. No point work ever. David's expression shifted. You were a professional dancer. Almost, she said. Close enough to feel it. Thenlows it. Silence. Then David stepped behind her and gently placed a shawl around her shoulders, the same one she'd used to cover Ava earlier that day. His hands lingered. Not intrusively, just long enough to be felt. I know what he's like, he said quietly. To lose the thing you've built your life around and wake up with nothing. Zoe looked up at him. How do you live with it? Sat beside her. Not too close, but close enough to share the night air. You don't, not at first. You keep moving for someone else. For Ava, in my case, she kept me standing when I couldn't do it for myself. Zoe looked down at the shawl wrapped around her. Heart felt both exposed and safe. I teach sometimes, she said. Little girls, nothing formal, just now to feel the rhythm again. David smiled. I think Ava would love that. She already does. Zoe whispered. She just doesn't know it yet. He chuckled, and the resilience returned. Not heavy this time, but healing. They sat beneath the stars. Two people once broken, now finding something real in the stillness. Not strangers anymore, something closer. It started with a whisper and a tug on the sleeve. One morning, sunlight poured into the living room as Ava tiptoed up to Zoe, who was seated on the floor, helping her stack building blocks. Her eyes were wide, hopeful, like she was asking for something sacred. Can you teach me how to dance? She asked. Zoe blinked. Dance. Ava nodded and pointed at the speaker on the shelf. I saw a video of a girl twirling like a fairy. Mommy used to do that. Daddy says I'm not old enough, but I want to be a fairy too. It was the first time Ava had mentioned her mother without prompting. Zoe gently brushed a curl from her cheek. I can show you a few things if you want now, Ava beamed. Zoe glanced toward the hallway. David was still on a conference call. She smiled and said, now. They stepped onto the patio where the afternoon sun cast golden shadows across the tiles. Zoe connected her phone to the speaker and a soft ballet melody filled the backyard. She slipped off her sandals and stood barefoot on the warm stone. First, we breathe, she whispered, taking Ava's small hands. One step at a time, arms overhead. A gentle plea, a slow, careful turn. Ava giggled as she wobbled and caught Zoe's waist for Blaine's. It's okay, Zoe laughed. Even fairies fall. The light hit them just right. Ava's dress catching the breeze. Zoe's hair glowing in the sun. There was no audience, just joy. Inside the kitchen, David reached for a glass of water, then froze. Through the window, he saw them dancing, Zoe guiding Ava in his low circles, her form elegant and unforced. She bent to match Avishai, steadying her gently, laughing with her. Neither of them was pretending. His hand holding the cold glass touched a photo frame on the counter. The one of Lily smiling with baby Ava. He hadn't moved it in over a year. Now he picked it up, then set it face down. He looked outside again. Zoe had lifted Ava into her arms, twirling her gently. Ava's laugh rang out, clear as a bell, and Zoe's face turned to Wardlight, shone with something real. Not duty, not performance, love. David didn't know exactly when it happened, but something inside him shifted. She was no longer the woman he had hired. She was something more. That evening, after Ava had fallen asleep, arms still curved in a dancer's pose, David found Zoe at the dining table, sipping tea. Her hair was pulled back, cheeks still flushed from the sun. I saw you too, he said quietly. Zoe set her cup down. She asked me to. I know. I used to avoid ballet, he admitted. It reminded him of Lily. It hurt, but today it didn't. Zoe looked at him, her expression softening. You're good with her, David said. She listens to you. She lights up when you're around. She's special, Zoe replied, her voice cautious. David hesitated, then cleared his throat. I was thinking it might be easier for all of us if you stayed a little longer. Zoe's brows lifted slightly. You said you're between jobs. And Ava's clearly attached, Miss schedule's chaotic. I could use someone I trust. Zoe tilted her head. You trust him I do now, he said. It would help with appearances. Some of our partners from the gala are visiting. They're expecting to see a family. She looked down at her cup. So I'd be the nanny or the fake girlfriend or both? David's voice softened. Whatever you're comfortable with, you'd be paid well and dude. Have a home for now, Zoe thought for a long moment. Her gaze drifted toward the hallway where Ava slept peacefully. A faint melody still hummed from her room. Then she looked at David, his face open, vulnerable, sincere. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll stay." David nodded once. He didn't speak of Jane, but in the quiet, something unspoken passed between them. Not a contract, not a role, something simpler and infinitely more real. It was a rain afternoon, the kind that made the whole house feel smaller, quieter. Ava wasnopping after a morning full of play and peanut butter sandwiches, and David was holed up in his office, deep in back-to-back meetings. Zoe used the rare quiet to organize the hallway closet, a task Maria had mentioned, in passing, needed doing. She hummed softly to herself as she sorted through bins of old coats, holiday decorations, and baby items long since outgrown. She reached up to the top shelf and pulled down a dusty, unopened box marked Ava, 6 months. The cardboard was soft from time and corners slightly bent. Zoe hesitated, then opened it. Inside were tiny baby clothes, frilly dresses, knitted hats, a rattle with Ava's name engraved in soft silver. Zoe smiled, touching the soft blue blanket folded on top. But at the bottom of the box, wrapped in tissue paper, was something else. She peeled back the layers carefully and gasped. A pair of miniature ballet slippers, pale pink, worn at the tips, as if they had been placed on Ava's feet once or twice. A gift perhaps from Lily, a hope, a dream. Zoe's hand trembled as she lifted them. The satin was soft, Therabon's long and untied, and something in her chest cracked open. And in the meantime, it came without warning. Tears spilled onto her cheeks as she clutched the shoes to her chest. She slid down to sit on the floor, her back against the wall, arms wrapped around the tiny slippers like they weareth last fragile thread connecting her to the life she once imagined. She cried, not the quiet, graceful kind, but the kind that comes from deep inside. From the place where broken dreams still live. She wept for the girls had been, for the stage that had once been her world, for the future that had vanished in a single fall. She wept for the beauty of a child who still believed in fairies and pirouettes, and maybe just a little for the fact that in this home full of memories that were not hers, she had begun to feel like she belonged. Footsteps approached. Shatia to wipe her face quickly, hide the evidence, but the tears kept coming. David stepped into the doorway. He did not speak. He simply took in the sit of her, crumpled on the floor, holding his daughter's first ballet. Shoes, her shoulders shaking with grief. She did not speak aloud. He did not ask what was wrong. He did not try to fix it. Instead, he disappeared for a second, then returned and knelt beside her. Insolence. He placed a small box of tissues next. To her, close enough that she would not have to ask, but fair enough that it did not feel intrusive. He did not say, "I'm sorry." He did not say, "I understand." He said nothing at all. Zoe looked up at him through blurred eyes, and in that silence something passed between them. Quiet understanding, a moment of human truth. David sat down on the floor beside her, his back against the opposite wall. He did not look at her. He just stared at the shoes in her hands, then at the floor. They'd sat like that for several minutes. No words, no movement. Just two people side by side, mourning. Different lives and sharing the same air. Eventually, Zoe's tears slowed. She wiped her eyes, sniffled, and glanced over at David. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded. Still he said nothing. And yet somehow he had said everything. In that moment, Zoe knew he had stopped seeing her as a role to be played and started seeing her for what she really was. Not perfect, not unbroken, beautiful. And perhaps for both of them that was more than enough. The house was soonestly still for a weekday afternoon. Rain tapped gently against the windows, the only sound, aside from the faint hum of David's voice. Echoing from his office upstairs, Zoe and Ava were in the living room. A stack of coloring books was scattered across the rug, crayons rolling under the coffee table. Ava, in her favorite polka dot socks, bounced with endless energy from one end of the room to the other, giggling as she chased after a toy bunny. "I'm going to show Daddy Majemp," Ava declared, running toward the hallway that led to the staircase, so barely had time to react. "Eva, wait. Don't run with a sudden slip." A loud thump, then silence. Zoe's heart seized. Ava, she was all ready. At the stairs before her mind could process what was happening. Ava lay crumpled at the bottom step, whimpering in pain, her small hands clutching her knee. Zoe dropped to her knees beside her, panic flooding her chest. "Oh my God, Ava, baby. Are you okay? Look at me. Look at me. Don't move." Tears streamed down the child's face, and Zoe gently gathered her into her arms. Her breath came in shallow bursts. Blood just a scrape, but it looked like so much more on that knee leg. "I'm taking you to the hospital," Zoe whispered, her voice trembling. "You're going to be okay, sweetheart, I promise." She grabbed her keys, wrapped Ava in a soft blanket, and rushed out the door without even pausing to call David. At the hospital, the waiting room felt like a cavern. White lights, cold air, beeping monitors, and whispered voices that sat with Ava curled in her lap, trying to stay calm, kissing her forehead over and over. "It's just a scratch," the nurse had said kindly. "We'll do a quick x-ray just to be sure. But she's okay. She's very brave." Zoe nodded, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. When David arrived, the doors to the children's wing swung open with force. His eyes were wild, searching. He spotted them instantly. "Zoe," he rushed toward her. "What happened?" She stood quickly, still cradling Ava protectively in her arms. Her voice cracked. She fell the stairs. I didn't see her until she was all ready." David looked down at Ava, still pale, but drowsy from the nurse's gentle reassurances and apple juice. Zoe tried to speak again, but her throat closed. "I was so scared," she whispered. "She's notive in mine, but Her voice broke entirely. "I thought I lost her. The tears came fast this time. No time to hide them." She looked away, embarrassed, ashamed of falling apart in front of him. David didn't hesitate. He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around both of them. Ava still held tightly in Zoe's arms. Zoe stiffened for a moment, then collapsed into him, pressing her fiancé to his chest. Her shoulders shook. David said nothing. He just held them, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Ava stirred slightly and murmured, "Mommy Z," the nickname's list through David like a whisper of truth. He tightened his embrace. "She's okay," he said softly. "In both are." The moment hung in the sterile hospital air, impossibly intimate. No promises, no explanations, just connection. Zoe finally pulled back slightly, wiping her tears with the edge of her sleeve. "I'm sorry," she said. "I should have been." "No," David interrupted. Gently. "You were exactly who she needed." He looked into her eyes, really looked, and something shifted in him. Her fear had not been performative. Her tears had not been polite. Her love, however unspoken, had been real, more real than anything he had felt in years. Back at home hours later, Ava fell asleep, curled between them on the living room couch. Zoe stroked the child's hair softly. David sat beside them in silence. He reached out and took Zoe's hand, this time shedded and not pull away, and neither of them had to say a word. The air had turned heavy that morning, humid and gray, as if the world itself knew something was about to break. David was in his office sifting through contracts when his phone buzzed with a message from a longtime associate. "Just a quick note, nothing formal. Thought you should know Zoe's done this before a lot. Check the dating for hire forums. She's got a profile. She's been playing girlfriend for years. You're not the first. Attached was a screenshot. Zoe's old online. Add a grainy photo of her smiling in a red dress listing her services. Event date, business dinner companion, discreet and professional. David stared at it for a long time. He closed the message without trampling. His chest was tight, but he didn't want to believe it. He told himself it was in the past. The people do what they must to survive. But the seed was planted. That evening when Zoe came down the stairs in a soft cardigan, hair damp from her shower, she found David in the kitchen, stiff as stone. Head did not greet her, did not smile. Instead, he asked quietly, "Is there anything you want to tell me?" Zoe paused. "About what?" He turned the phone toward her, showing the screenshot. About this, the color drained from her face. She exhaled slowly, then nodded. "Yes, I was going to tell you. You said, oh, do that." "Not anymore." David's jaw tensed. "How many?" She flinched. "Does it matter?" "Yes," he said almost too quickly. "Because I need to know if any office, if you, with Ava, if all of that was just another performance." Zoe took a step back, hurt flashing across her face. "You think I could fake that kind of love?" David didn't answer. His salons hit harder than... "Any words?" Zoe blinked rapidly, trying to hold herself together. "I never lied about what I used to do. I did what I had to do to parent, to eat. But with her, with you, it stopped being pretend a long time ago." David swallowed hard, staring at the floor. I don't know what to believe anymore." The finality in his tone closed something inside her. She nodded slowly, then turned without a word. Outside, rain had started to fall, slow, deliberate drops tapping on the windows like fingers. Bye. The time she stepped into the street, it had become a downpour. So didn't run. She walked, her thin sweater soaking through in seconds, her heart heavier than the storm around her. When she reached the corner, she turned back once, just once, to look at the house she had started to believe was home. The lights were still on, but no one stood at the door. Later that night, David walked past the guest room and saw the door ajar, the bed perfectly made, the closet empty, and on the nightstand, a single fold piece of paper. He picked it up with trembling hands and read, "David, I've played roles. For years pretended to be someone I wasn't, smiled when I was breaking inside, held hands with strangers who never knew my name. I was good at it, too good. So good that I felt how it felt to be real, until Ava. I never expected you to trust me. But I hoped maybe one day I'd be more than the woman you hired. I hoped you saw what I felt, and that it wasn't pretend. Yes. I've acted before, but this time I didn't know how to stop." Zoe David stood in the quiet of the room, the letter shaking slightly in his hands, the rain still tapping at the windows like a memory refusing to leave. And for the first time in weeks, the house felt really empty. The sun dipped behind the old brick building, casting golden streaks across the wooden floors of the Carter Ballet House. Inside, laughter mixed with the soft rhythm of slippered feet. At the front, Zoe guided a line of children through first position. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, her voice calm as she offered gentle corrections and encouragement. Ava twirled at the front, giggling as she fell into Zoe's arms. "Careful, ballerina," Zoe said, pressing a kiss to her head. Then the front doors opened. Zoe looked up and froze. David stood there holding a small white box. It had been weeks since she'd left, weeks without a word. Ava spotted him first. "Daddy." "Mommy Z. Daddy's here." Zoe turned slowly, her breath catching. David stepped into the studio, eyes locked on hers. The children quieted, sensing something important. Even the campanist stopped mid-note. He walked to the center of the room, hands trembling slightly as he opened the box. Inside lay a tiny pair of white ballet shoes. "They are the first shoes you Usetto teach Ava," he said. "I kept them." Zoe's eyes filled, but she said nothing. David's voice softened. "I lost the love of my life once, and I thought I'd never have room in me to love again. But I was wrong." He looked up. "You didn't take her place. You made a new one. For Ava, for me, for yourself," he exhaled. "Will you dance through life with us?" Not just today, not just for Ava, but forever. Zoe covered her mouth, tears falling. She nodded slowly, then firmly. La ran into their arms, clapping. The room erupted in cheers. The children didn't fully understand, but joy needed no translation. A few weeks later, a wedding was held right there in the studio. No chandeliers, no orchestra, just paper lanterns and fairy lights, chairs wrapped in old fabric and love filling the air. Zoe wore a simple ivory dress. Ava scattered hand-folded petals in a tutu of her own. The guests weren't celebrities. They were people whose lives had been touched. A boy Zoe had taught for free. A mother David had quietly helped. A janitor whose daughter now danced because someone believed she could. It wasn't grand, but it was sacred. Zoe tried to speak her vows, but choked on tears. David gently squeezed her hands. You don't need to sigh anything, he whispered. I already know. Ava stood between them, smiling wide. It was not a performance. It was home. A year later, the Carter Ballet Houst had grown into the region's largest community dance program. Children lined up weekly, not for perfection, but for belonging. Zoe Carter now stood as its director, not an actress, not a role, a teacher, a mother. A woman finally living something real. David had launched the Lily Carter Memorial Fund in his late wife's honor to support single mothers pursuing dreams. Behind, and Ava, now foreign-spirited, had claimed her place. Shedded laces, handed out water bottles, and reminded everyone to smile while they danced. At the entrance of the studio hung a photo of David, Zoe, and Ava, barefoot on stage, hands clasped, bowing together. Beneath it, a plaque read, Here, every child can dance, every soul can heal, every love deserves a second chance. The year-end showcase was standing room only. Ava stepped forward in a tiny white dress. Her solo wasn't perfect, but it was magic. At the final note, she dashed into Zoe's arms and grabbed David's hand. Together, they walked to the center of the stage and bowed. The room thundered with applause, and no one watching could doubt it. Some families are born, others are built. This one, it was danced into existence. If this story touched your heart, we invite you to join our growing family of listeners who believe in the healing power of love and second chances. At Soul Stirring Stories, we bring you real, emotional, and unforgettable tales that remind us all what truly matters. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that speak to the soul. And burn. Some families are born, others are built, but every heart deserves to be seen, and every story deserves to be told. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a moment that might just change your life.